My name is Camila Reyes. I'm 37 years old. 9 years ago, I made a decision in less than 5 minutes that determined the rest of my life. At the time, I didn't think of it as strength, or intelligence, or even survival. I thought of it as control. Because I understood something very clearly in that moment. If I lost control, I would lose everything. Not just my marriage, my daughter, and that was not something I was willing to risk. Married for 10 years. 10. Long enough to stop questioning things, long enough to believe that routine meant safety, long enough to forget that stability is something you maintain, not something you earn once and keep forever. We lived in Guadalajara, a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where nothing dramatic ever seems to happen, where people believe that if you follow the rules, life will follow too. I believed that, for a long time. My husband, Rafael Navarro, believed something else. He believed in momentum, in movement, in appearing bigger than reality, and for 10 years, we made that imbalance work. Or at least, I thought we did. I'd built the structure. He stood on it. Every month, we transferred money into a shared account. Savings, future plans, a better house, a better life. I tracked everything. Every number, every expense, every shift. I knew exactly where we stood. Rafael didn't. He didn't need to. Because, as long as things looked stable, he assumed they were. That was the first crack. Not the affair, not the betrayal, the assumption. Growth is not control. Understanding is, and only one of us was paying attention. There was something else too. Something Rafael never knew. Not because I was hiding, because I didn't need permission. I had my own account, separate, quiet, built slowly. At first, it was small, almost nothing, just a habit. Then it became something else. A system. I studied markets, patterns, behavior, loss, recovery. I lost money, more than once, and every time, I learned something I hadn't seen before. I didn't tell him, because some parts of your life should not be shared, not out of secrecy, out of survival. I never imagined that one day, that account would be the only thing standing between me and starting from zero. The night everything broke, felt normal. That's how these things begin. Quiet, unremarkable, dangerous. Sophia was 9, our daughter. She had fallen asleep at the table, a pencil still in her hand, a half-drawn heart in front of her. She wanted to be a doctor. At 9, already certain. I remember lifting her, her head resting against my shoulder, her breathing soft, trusting, completely unaware that her life was about to change. I tucked her into bed, pulled the blanket up, adjusted it carefully, then paused, just for a second longer than usual. Because something felt off. Not fear, not suspicion, just a shift. The kind you almost ignore. Most people would have ignored it. I didn't. I went back to the kitchen, opened my laptop, checked our account. At first, I thought it was a mistake. One transaction, too large, too precise, too clean. I frowned, scrolled. Another one, smaller, then another, and another. My fingers slowed, because patterns don't lie. People do. Then, the amounts. Then, the destinations. And that was when everything changed. This wasn't random. This wasn't an error. This was a system. Money had been moved, carefully, deliberately, over time. And it wasn't gone. It had been relocated, into someone else's life. I saw her name, Lucia Serrano. It meant nothing. For about 3 seconds. Then it meant everything. I didn't call him. I didn't panic. I didn't react. I waited. Because reaction is where you lose control. And I wasn't going to lose control. Not yet. When Rafael walked in that night, everything looked the same. Same shoes, same keys, same calm. But something had changed. Not in him. In me. Because now I could see it. The distance. The truth. "What are you doing up?" he asked. I turned the laptop toward him, slowly. And I watched his face. That moment was the real beginning. Because he didn't look surprised. He didn't look confused. He didn't look guilty. He just looked prepared. And then, he said, "We need to talk." And in that exact moment, I understood something that most people realized too late. This wasn't a conversation. It was a conclusion. He didn't start immediately. That's what I remember most. Not the words. The delay. Raphael sat down slowly, across from me, like this was something he had already rehearsed. Not what to say, but how it would end. He adjusted his sleeves, looked at the laptop, then at me. Calm. Too calm. That was the confirmation. Her name is Lucia, he said. No denial, no confusion. No, what are you talking about? Just, her name. Like saying it out loud would make everything cleaner. Simpler. I held his gaze. And our money? I asked. Quiet, but sharp. Because anger blurs things, clarity cuts. He leaned back slightly. A small movement. Defensive. I've been helping her. Helping. That word again. Soft. Convenient. Empty. I nodded slowly. How much help, I asked. Requires almost everything we saved in 10 years. A pause. Not long, but real. His jaw shifted slightly. There it was. Not guilt. Calculation. It's not almost everything, he said, which told me everything I needed to know. He knew exactly how much it was. I turned the screen back to myself. Read the number. Every digit. Slow, precise. The silence that followed was heavier than anything he could have said. He glanced toward the hallway, toward Sophia's room, then back at me. It's not just your money, he said. There it was, the first layer, the justification. We built that together. Then carefully, you didn't create that money alone. That sentence didn't raise his voice, didn't accuse, didn't attack. And somehow, it was worse. Because it erased everything quietly. 10 years, compressed into something transferable, something he could reassign. Like I wasn't a partner, just a percentage. Upstairs, a small sound, Sophia shifting in her sleep. That sound cut to everything, because suddenly, this wasn't just about him. This was about her. I leaned forward slightly. And the apartment? I asked. Yes. No hesitation. And the tuition payments? A beat. Yes. Every answer was clean, prepared, final. That's when I asked the only question that mattered. Are you in a relationship with her? He looked at me. And for the first time, there was a pause. Because this wasn't financial. This was real. Yes. One word. No apology. No explanation. Just truth. The room went still. The refrigerator hummed softly. A car passed outside. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once. And everything continued. Like nothing had just ended. How long? I asked. Months. Months. While I planned, while I tracked, while I built. He was already moving everything somewhere else. And now, I asked. He held my gaze and said it. I think it's better if we end this. Better. Such a clean word. Efficient. Like he was closing a file. Not ending a marriage, because this was the moment. The one where everything could go wrong. If I reacted emotionally, I would lose. Not just him. Control. And if I lost control, I could lose Sophia. And that was not something I would allow. You've already decided, I said. He nodded. Yes. Of course he had. Men like Raphael don't start conversations like this, unless everything important has already been moved. And Sophia? I asked. That changed something. Subtle. But real. I think it's better if she stays here, he said. There it was. The second betrayal. Quieter. But deeper. I tilted my head slightly. Better for who? For her, he said quickly. Stability. Stability. From a man who had just dismantled ours. I nodded slowly. You want the house, I said. Silence. You moved the money. Silence. You're with her. Silence. And now you want our daughter. He didn't answer. Because saying it out loud would make it undeniable. You want the life without me. His jaw tightened. That's not what this is. But it was. And we both knew it. I stood up. Not suddenly. Not emotionally. Just decisively. What are you doing? He asked. I didn't answer. I walked past him, down the hallway. into Sophia's room. The light was dim. She was asleep, curled slightly, peaceful. Unaware, I sat on the edge of her bed, moved a strand of hair from her face, and in that moment, everything became simple. Not easy. Simple. Loudly. Emotionally. He would use it. Instability. Unfit. Uncontrolled. And I would risk losing her. I stood up slowly. Walked back into the kitchen. Raphael was watching me. Trying to read me. He couldn't. "I'll leave," I said. That surprised him. "Good. I'll leave quietly," I continued. Now he was listening. "But Sophia comes with me." Long. Heavy. Because now, everything had shifted. "That's not how this works," he said. "It is tonight. No emotion. No escalation. Just direction. We should discuss custody properly." He said, "We will." A step closer. "But tonight, she comes with me." Another pause. Longer, because now, he was recalculating, and for the first time, he wasn't ahead. And that was when I realized something. He had planned everything, except me not breaking. "Fine," he said. Short, controlled. But I saw it. The first crack. Because he understood something now. He hadn't won yet. I turned on the light gently. Sophia stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, confused. "Mom?" I sat beside her, brushed her hair back. "Hey, cariño." Her hand reached for mine immediately, warm, trusting. "Why are you awake?" she asked. I smiled, controlled, measured. "We're going to stay somewhere else for a while." She blinked, still half asleep. "Are we in trouble?" That question, that one small, quiet question, cut deeper than anything Raphael had said. Because children don't question the person who leaves. They question themselves. I shook my head immediately. "No," then softer. "No, my love." She looked at me carefully. "Children don't listen to words. They read certainty." I held it. Steady, unbroken. Then she nodded. "Okay." Just like that. No fear, no resistance. Just trust. And that trust locked everything into place. I stood up, started packing. Not everything. Just what mattered. Clothes, school things, her books, the anatomy sketch. She held onto it the entire time, like it anchored her. We walked back through the hallway, past the kitchen, past Raphael. He was standing now, watching, trying to understand what he had just lost control of. "This isn't finished," he said. No, it wasn't. But not in the way he thought. "It is for tonight," I replied. I didn't stop, didn't argue, didn't negotiate. Because negotiation is where you lose pieces. And I had nothing left to give him. We stepped outside. The night air felt different. Cooler, sharper, cleaner. Sophia slipped her hand into mine. "Where are we going?" she asked. I didn't look back. Forward. We got into the car. I closed the door, started the engine, and drove. Not fast, not emotional. Just away. That was the real beginning. Not the betrayal. Not the conversation. The exit. Because leaving is not about distance. It's about direction. And for the first time, I was choosing mine. The first place we stayed was temporary. A small apartment. One bedroom. Minimal furniture. No history, no memory. Just space. Sophia walked in, looked around, then asked, "Where should I put my books?" I pointed to a small table near the window. She nodded, set them down carefully, sat, opened one, and just like that, we continued. But that night was different. The lights were off, the room quiet. I could hear her breathing beside me. Soft, steady, safe. I stared at the ceiling, not thinking, not planning. Feeling the weight of everything I had just cut away. "Mom?" Her voice was barely there. "Yes." A pause. Then, "Did we do something wrong?" My chest tightened. Not sharply. Deep. Because that question carried everything Raphael had broken. I turned toward her. Placed my hand on her back. Slow. Steady. No, abrace. Then again, no, cariño. She didn't speak immediately. Then she whispered, okay. And just like that, she believed me. Completely. That kind of trust is not comforting. It's responsibility. Because now, I had to become someone who would never make that answer a lie. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was thinking about him. Because I was rebuilding. From nothing? No. From truth. And truth is a stronger foundation. The next morning, I opened my private account. The one Raphael never knew existed. The numbers were still there. Untouched. Intact. Waiting. Not enough to replace everything, but enough to begin. Between losing everything and losing what people think is everything, I closed the laptop, exhaled slowly, and made a decision. I wouldn't chase what he took. I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't prove anything. I would build something he would never be able to touch. And I would do it quietly. Because quiet growth is the most dangerous kind. The first few months were simple. Not easy. Simple. Wake up, prepare breakfast, walk Sophia to school, work, come home, study, repeat. Just discipline. But that wasn't the hardest part. Not even close. Because 8 months later, something happened that almost broke everything again. And this time, it had nothing to do with Raphael. He had just assumed he would. I nodded once, then turned, and walked back to my daughter. Because that night, I wasn't just leaving a marriage. I was choosing a future. And Raphael still had no idea what that decision was going to cost him. It happened on a Tuesday. Nothing special about the day. No warning, no signal. Just numbers turning red. I was sitting on the floor, back against the bed. Laptop open, screen glowing in the dark. Sophia asleep behind me. And in less than an hour, almost half of what I had built was gone. Not stolen. Not taken. Lost. Because of me. A misread. A timing error. A moment of confidence I hadn't earned. I stared at the screen, didn't move, didn't blink. Because this kind of loss doesn't make you panic. It makes you still. My hands felt cold, not shaking, just empty. My breathing slowed. The room felt smaller, not physically, structurally. Because suddenly, everything I thought I had under control looked fragile, temporary, breakable. And for the first time since I left, I felt it. Not fear. Collapse. The kind that doesn't show, the kind that happens quietly, inside your chest. I closed the laptop. Slowly. Carefully. As if closing it too fast would make it real. I sat there, listening. To Sophia breathing behind me. Steady. Uninterrupted. Trusting. That sound brought everything back into focus. Because suddenly, this wasn't about money. This was about direction. And direction can be lost much faster than money. I leaned my head back against the bed, closed my eyes, and asked myself one question. Not why did this happen? Not how do I fix it? Just, do I react? Or do I learn? That was the real decision. Because reaction is fast, emotional, uncontrolled. Learning is slow, uncomfortable, stable. Most people react. That's why they lose everything. Not once. Twice. I didn't move. Not that night. No trades, no adjustments, no desperate attempt to recover. Just stillness. That was the hardest thing I had done so far. The next morning, I started again. Not aggressively. Not urgently. Precisely. I opened every position. Reviewed every decision. Where I entered. Why I entered. What I ignored. What I assumed. What I didn't understand. Because mistakes are not random. They are patterns you haven't fully seen yet. And once you see them, they stop repeating. That loss didn't destroy me. It refined me. From that point on, everything changed. I stopped chasing growth. I started building control. Every move became slower, more deliberate, more structured. I didn't try to win fast. I made sure I couldn't lose easily. And over time, the account stabilized, then recovered, then grew. Not dramatically, but consistently. And consistency is power. Years passed, quietly, deliberately, no big breakthrough, no dramatic turning point, just progress. I moved apartments twice, each time slightly better, more space, more light, more control. Sophia grew, disciplined, focused, certain. She studied at the same table every night, notes precise. She stopped asking about her father, not because she forgot, because she understood. And understanding is quieter than forgiveness. One night, something happened I didn't expect. I came home later than usual. Work had run long. My head was still full of numbers, decisions, calculations. I opened the door quietly, didn't turn on the lights. And I saw her, Sophia, sitting at the table. Not studying, not writing, just sitting. Still, looking at nothing. I paused, watched her, and something in my chest tightened. Because I recognized that posture, that stillness, that weight. I walked in slowly. Sophia? She looked up quickly. Too quickly, like she had been somewhere else. Hey, she said, trying to sound normal. But I heard it. This shift. I sat down across from her. What's wrong? She hesitated, looked down, then said something I didn't expect. I saw you. I froze, not visibly, inside. When, I asked, her fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the table. You were in your room. A pause. With your laptop. Another pause. You looked like something broke. That hit harder than anything Raphael had ever done, because she had seen it. The one moment I thought I kept contained. The one moment I allowed myself to almost collapse. And she remembered. I didn't want to ask, she said quietly. I thought maybe I did something wrong again. That was it. That was the moment. The second pain spike. Stronger than the first. Because this time, it wasn't confusion. It was memory. And I realized something terrifying. Even when you think you're protecting your child, they see more than you believe. I reached across the table. Placed my hand over hers. Firm, steady. You didn't do anything wrong. I held her gaze. Made sure she saw it, not just heard it. I was learning. She frowned slightly. Learning what? How not to lose again. Silence. Then, she nodded slowly. Like something clicked. Like something settled. And in that moment, I understood something completely. This wasn't just about rebuilding my life. This was about teaching her how to build hers. And that meant I couldn't afford to break. Not even once. Not where she could see it. Because she was learning from everything. Even my silence. Even my mistakes. Even my recovery. And that changed everything. From that night on, I wasn't just rebuilding. I was designing. For both of us. And that's what I became truly dangerous. Because now, failure was no longer an option. And somewhere, without knowing it, Raphael was still living inside a system that was already starting to fail. He just didn't know it yet. The file didn't look important. That's how it always begins. Not with something obvious. Not with something dramatic. Just ordinary. It was placed on my desk with the others. Thin. Routine. Another distrust asset. Another structure under pressure. I opened it without thinking, scrolled once, then stopped, because I saw the address. And everything aligned. Not emotionally, structurally. The same street. The same house. The one we used to talk about. The one Raphael moved into with her. My fingers rested on the page, still, not shaking. Just still. Because this wasn't shock. This was confirmation. I kept reading. Loan structure, refinancing, expansion, then expansion again. Classic pattern. Build, leverage, stretch, ignore pressure, then collapse. Payments delayed, then partial, then missed. I leaned back slowly. There it was. Not revenge, not coincidence. Just structure, doing exactly what structure does when it's built wrong. I flipped to ownership. Rafael Navarro, primary. Lucia Serrano, secondary. Of course. I closed the file, then opened it again. Not because I doubted it. Because I needed to confirm something. that I felt nothing, and I didn't. That was the real shift. 9 years earlier, this would have broken me. Now, it was just information. And information is leverage. I stood up, walked to the window. The city moved below me. Cars, people, noise. Unaware, unchanged. Just like it had been 9 years ago. I placed my hand lightly against the glass. Cold, grounding. I wasn't that woman anymore. The one sitting at a kitchen table, trying to understand why her life was being reassigned. No, I understood systems, and systems don't care about emotions. They respond to position. I walked back to my desk, picked up the phone. Send me the full structure on this file. No explanation. No hesitation. Just instruction. Within the hour I had everything. Primary lender. Secondary exposure. Legal vulnerabilities. Entry points. PABs. Not to buy the house. That would be too obvious. Too emotional. I didn't want the house. I wanted control of how it moved. That was the difference between reaction and strategy. I made 3 calls. One to a partner firm, one to legal, and one to Matteo. Camila, his voice hadn't changed. Still precise. Still controlled. I have a case. You always do. A pause. I need the cleanest path to control. Silence. Then, send it. I did. Minutes later he called back. You've already decided. Not a question, a statement. Yes. This one matters. I looked at the file. It does. He didn't ask why. He didn't need to. Then don't rush the end, he said. Control the middle. I almost smiled. Because that was exactly what I was going to do. The process wasn't fast. And that was the point. Weeks turned into months. Quiet movement. Positioning. Acquiring pieces no one else was watching. Parts of a structure that didn't look important. Until they connected. I didn't contact Raphael. I didn't contact Lucia. I didn't give them a chance to react. Because by the time people understand what's happening, it's already done. That's how control works. Invisible. Until it isn't. There were moments, small ones, when I remembered the past. The kitchen. His voice. I chose her. But it didn't hurt anymore. Because pain, when understood, becomes pattern. And pattern is power. At home, Sophia was 18, focused, disciplined, certain. She studied late into the night. Books spread across the table. Notes, layered with precision. One evening, she placed an envelope in front of me. Thin. Official. She didn't say anything. Just watched me open it. I read, then looked up. You got in. She nodded. Medical school. Top scores. Exactly where she had been heading, for years. I placed the letter down slowly. Because moments like this require stillness, not noise. I'm proud of you, I said. She smiled. Small, certain, like me. And in that moment, everything aligned. What I had built. What she had become. What was about to happen. The final step came quietly. A signature. A transfer. Confirmation. Done. I closed the file. Picked up my coat. And this time, I didn't go alone. Sophia. She looked up. Yes? Come with me. She didn't ask why. She didn't ask where. She just stood and followed. We drove in silence. Not uncomfortable. Focused. When we arrived, nothing had changed. Same house, same structure, same illusion. I stepped out of the car, Sophia beside me, calm, steady. We walked to the door. I raised my hand and knocked. Once. Then waited. Closer. The door opened. And everything shifted. The door opened slowly. Lucia Serrano stood there. For a moment, she didn't recognize me. Why would she? To her, I had been something temporary. Something already removed. A problem that had been solved years ago. Her eyes moved across my face, then shifted. To Sophia standing beside me. And something changed. not understanding. Instinct. See? She said carefully. I held her gaze. Is Raphael home? A pause. Then she stepped back slightly, not welcoming, not blocking, just uncertain. Raphael, she called. Her voice carried through the house. Footsteps followed, slower than I remembered. He appeared. Raphael Navarro. 9 years older, but not stronger. Something in him had shifted. Not visibly broken, but warned, like something had been pressing on him for too long. His eyes met mine, then moved to Sophia. And that was the moment. Not recognition, not surprise, loss. Because in one glance, he understood something he couldn't undo. His daughter had grown without him. Camila, he said quietly. My name sounded unfamiliar in his voice, like something he hadn't used in years. I nodded once. Yes. Silence filled the doorway. Lucia looked between us, trying to understand a history she had never fully seen. This is Sophia, I said, not introducing, stating. Raphael swallowed. I know. But his voice didn't match the words, because knowing someone exists and knowing who they became are not the same thing. Sophia didn't speak. She stood beside me, calm, composed, exactly as I had raised her. I reached into my bag, pulled out the folder, held it toward him. He didn't take it immediately. He looked at it, like it might contain something irreversible. It did. Take it, I said. He did. Slowly, his eyes moved across the first page, then the second, then back again. His breathing changed. Not dramatically, but enough. What is that? Lucia asked. He didn't answer, because he already knew. He just didn't want to say it out loud. This property is now under my control, I said. Lucia let out a short laugh, sharp, disbelieving. That's not possible. I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on Raphael. Because he was the one who mattered here. The one who made the original decision. You leveraged something you didn't fully own, I said. You expanded too fast. And you assumed it would hold. His jaw tightened. You bought the debt, he said. Not a question. Recognition. Yes. Lucia stepped forward. This is ridiculous. We can fix this. We'll talk to the bank. There is no bank to talk to. That stopped her. Completely. Because now she understood. This wasn't a warning. This was an outcome. Raphael closed the folder halfway, looked at me. Long enough. Silence. Then he looked at Sophia again, longer this time. Trying to compress 9 years into a few seconds. He couldn't. I didn't think, he started. Then stopped. I waited. Because unfinished sentences reveal more than finished ones. I didn't think you would come back like this, he said. I tilted my head slightly. You didn't see me then, I said. So you couldn't imagine me now. That was the truth. Simple, unavoidable. Lucia's expression shifted. More aware. Because she was starting to understand something else. The life she stepped into had never been fully hers. It had been transferred, not built. And now, it was being taken back. Raphael exhaled slowly. We'll leave, he said. No argument, no resistance. Because he understood the position. And for the first time, he had none. You'll receive the formal timeline. Lucia opened her mouth, then closed it. Because there was nothing left to negotiate. I adjusted my bag. Prepared to leave. But before I turned, I said the one thing I came to say. You didn't choose her, Raphael. A pause. You chose the version of life that was easier to take. That line settled into the space between us. Not loud, but final. And for the first time, he had no response. Because he knew. He hadn't built anything. He had only taken. And things taken don't last. I turned. Walked back toward the car. Sophia beside me. When we reached the sidewalk, she finally spoke. I looked forward. Not back. Yes. A pause. Then, He lost everything? I thought about that. Carefully. Then shook my head. No. Another pause. He lost what he didn't understand how to keep. She nodded. Quiet, certain, and that was enough. We got into the car. I started the engine and drove away. Not fast, not emotional. Just finished. I didn't look back. Not at the house, not at the door. Not at the life that used to define me. Because looking back means something is still there. And there wasn't. Sophia sat quietly beside me, her hand resting on her notebook, the same way she used to hold it when she was 9. Only now, she understood what she was holding. Direction. We drove in silence. Not uncomfortable, not heavy. Just complete. Because some endings don't need noise. They need space. Time passed. Not dramatically, not in a way that demanded attention, just forward. The house moved through process. Cleared, transferred, then listed. I signed the final documents without hesitation, without reflection, without attachment. Because that place had never really been mine. Not when I lived there, and not now. It had only ever been a point in a system. And that system was now closed. I didn't visit. I didn't stand outside it one last time. I didn't allow myself that kind of sentiment. Because closure is not something you feel. It's something you stop meeting. That fall, Sophia started medical school. Focused, disciplined, exactly who she had always been becoming. Some nights, I would wake up and see the light still on. Walk quietly to the kitchen, and find her there. Books open. Notes spread across the table. Her handwriting precise. Her posture steady. The same quiet intensity I once carried, now living in her. And every time I saw that, I felt something settle inside me. Not pride, not relief, certainty. Because I knew she would never stand where I once stood. Not because life wouldn't test her, but because she would see it coming. And that was everything. One evening, she looked up at me. Mom. I stopped. Yes, she hesitated just slightly, then asked, We're okay, right? I looked at her. Really looked, not as the child I once carried, but as the woman she was becoming. And I understood the weight behind that question. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about the house. It wasn't about Raphael. It was about safety, stability, truth. And I answered her the only way I could. Yes. Not soft. Not uncertain. Clear. Because this time, I knew it was true. Not because nothing had been taken from us, but because we had built something that couldn't be taken again. She nodded, returned to her notes, calm, certain. And that was the moment I understood something fully. This was never about getting anything back. Not the money, not the house, not even the life I thought I had lost. It was about becoming someone who could never be placed in that position again. And more importantly, raising someone who would never accept it. I walked to the window, looked out at the city, lights moving, cars passing, people living lives I would never know. Just like it had been, the night everything broke. But I was different now. Not stronger in the way people describe, not harder, not colder, just clearer. Because clarity doesn't come from winning. It comes from understanding. And I understood everything now. Raphael didn't destroy my life. He revealed it. He showed me exactly where I was vulnerable. Where I had given control, without realizing it. Where I had mistaken stability for security. And once you see that, you can never unsee it. Months later, I heard about him. Through someone who knew someone. The kind of information that travels without intention. He had downsized, left the area, started something smaller, quieter. Lucia wasn't mentioned. I didn't ask. Because it didn't matter. Not anymore. He was no longer part of any structure in my life. Just a variable. A past input. Something that had already been processed and closed. Have you ever had to rebuild your life from nothing? I didn't rebuild loudly. I didn't prove anything. I didn't go back to show anyone what I became. I didn't need to. Because success, real success, is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand attention. It just exists. And as I stood there, watching the reflection of the life I had built and the daughter I had raised, I understood the final truth. Raphael thought he was choosing a better future, but he didn't just lose me that day. He walked away from the only one that would have lasted. And the most interesting part, he didn't even realize it until it was already gone. Months passed. Not dramatically. Not in a way that demanded attention. Just forward. But something changed after that day. Not outside. Inside. Because when you close something that defined your life for years, there's always a moment after. A quiet one. Where you expect to feel something. Release, victory, closure. And instead, you feel nothing. That surprised me. Not because I wanted to feel something, but because I realized something important. It was never about him. Not anymore. The house was processed, transferred, listed, sold, clean, final. I signed every document without hesitation, without revisiting the past, without attaching meaning to it. Because that place had never really belonged to me. Not when I lived there. And not now. It had only ever been part of a system. And now, that system was closed. But that wasn't the most important part. Was what happened at home. One evening, Sophia came home later than usual. Her bag heavier than normal. Her steps slower. I noticed immediately. Not because something was wrong. Because something had shifted. She sat down at the table. Didn't open her books. Didn't speak. Just sat there, quiet. I watched her for a moment, then walked over. Long day? I asked. She nodded, still looking down. Then after a few seconds, she sensed something I didn't expect. Everything inside me stilled. Not miserably, but completely. When? I asked. This afternoon. She finally looked up, calm, but different. He came to campus. A pause. I think he knew I would be there. That landed. Not as pain, as information. What did he say? I asked. She hesitated. Then, he didn't say much. Another pause. He just looked at me. I didn't interrupt. Because I knew this wasn't about words. He asked if I was doing well. Her fingers tightened slightly. I said yes. A small silence. Then she added he said he was proud of me. That was the moment. Not explosive, not dramatic, but heavy. Because those words came too late. And we both knew it. What did you say? I asked. She looked at me steady. I said, thanked you. A pause. Then I left. I nodded, because that was exactly what I would have done. No confrontation, no emotional release, just distance. That's when she asked, did I do the right thing? I didn't answer immediately, because this wasn't about right or wrong. This was about identity. You did what was yours to do, I said. She frowned slightly. What does that mean? It means you didn't carry anything that doesn't belong to you. She thought about that, then nodded, slowly, like something settled. And that was the moment I realized something else. She didn't need protection anymore. She had understanding. And understanding is stronger. We sat there for a while. Not talking. Not needing to. Just present. And in that silence, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not release. Not pride. Completion. Because everything had come full circle. Not through revenge. Not through confrontation. Through growth. And growth is the only outcome that lasts. That night, I didn't go to bed immediately. I stayed in the kitchen. The same place where everything had started. Different house, different life, same silence. Sophia had already gone to her room, books open, light on, moving forward, always forward. I stood by the window, hands resting lightly on the counter, looking out at the city, and for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to think about him. Not emotionally, not painfully, just objectively. The man I spent 10 years with. The man who thought he was choosing a better life. And I ask myself something simple. Not, why did he do it? Not, how could he? Just, what did he actually choose? Because people don't just choose another person. They choose a direction, a structure, a way of living. And once you see that clearly, everything becomes easier to understand. He didn't choose love. He chose ease. He didn't choose growth. He chose expansion without understanding. He didn't choose a better future. He chose a faster one. And faster doesn't mean stronger. That realization didn't hurt. It clarified, because it meant something important. It was never about me not being enough. It was about him not understanding what enough actually was. And that distinction changes everything. I close my eyes for a moment. Not to remember, to release. Because holding on to clarity doesn't mean holding on to the past. It means carrying the lesson. Behind me, I heard a chair move slightly. Soft, careful. I turned. Sophia was standing there, holding her notebook, watching me. "How do you always know what to do?" she asked. I smiled slightly. Not because I had an answer. Because I remembered asking the same question once. "I don't," I said. She frowned. "But you always look like you do." "That's because I decide before I feel." She blinked. "What does that mean?" I walked toward her, took the notebook gently from her hands, set it on the table, then looked at her. "It means I choose direction first." A pause. "And I let my feelings catch up later." She thought about that. Longer this time. Because this wasn't simple. Then she nodded. "I think I understand." And I believed her. Because she always did. Not immediately, but completely. She reached for her notebook again, turned to go back to her room, then stopped, and asked one more question. "Do you think he regrets it?" The question hung there. Quiet, heavy, honest. I considered it. Not quickly. Carefully. Because the answer mattered. Not for him. For her. "I think," I said slowly, "he understands it now." She waited. "And understanding," I paused, "is sometimes heavier than regret." She nodded, didn't ask anything else, and walked back to her room. That was the last time we spoke about him. Not because he disappeared, but because he no longer had a place in our structure. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. Life didn't slow down. It didn't pause to acknowledge anything. It just continued. And that's when I understood something final. There is no moment where everything suddenly feels complete. No point where you say, "Now it's over." Completion is not a feeling, it's a position. And I was no longer inside that story. I had moved beyond it.